We're going to look here at the Q3 rubric first semester. And once you guys have checked out your score, close that back out and then put your attention back up on the screen. All right. The rubric, like I said, it's out of 6, 6 being the highest, and you're graded on 3 criteria. The first one is your thesis. The second one is evidence and commentary. And the third one is sophistication. All right. Now, thesis is a very easy point to make. Evidence and commentary is it's skill. You have to practice and practice and practice. Sophistication is the hardest point to get. We'll get to that in just a second. I want you guys to notice on the rubric, in row A, there's a 0.5, and in row B, there's a 2.5, and in row C, there's a 0.5. Those are only available during the first semester. I'm trying to teach you guys, like if you look at the difference between a 0 and a 1 on the thesis, there's a lot of room. You either get it or you don't. So during the first semester, while we're really learning how to write, you're going to be able to score partial credit. All right, same thing with the evidence and commentary, same thing with sophistication. Once we get to second semester, those partial points will go away and it'll just go 1 or 0, 2 or 3, 1 or 0 again. So let's look at this. Again, thesis point is the easiest point to get. And I was really pleased with you guys' for the most part, y'all's thesis statements from this first essay. We can read this. But when you're looking at how to earn the point, notice in number 1, it says there's no defensible thesis, it restates the prompt, it's a summary or incoherent claim, or it does not respond to the prompt. That's a 0. Obviously, it's not on topic. 0.5 means you respond to the prompt with a thesis that presents a defensible position. Who can tell me what a defensible position is? What does it mean? Anybody?
You're taking a side.
Yeah, you pick a side. It's arguable, basically. And pretty much everyone did that, so that's really good. You wouldn't ever write a paper where you're like, oh, this table is brown, and that's your thesis, because there is no way to argue that. Yes, it's brown. Now, in order to get the full point, there are 3 different ways to get a full point in addition to just having a defensible position. The first one, you have to suggest a line of reasoning that relates to your position, like why, okay? The second bullet is you have to present a claim that's beyond a simple position. And that just means you have to kind of like make a more nuanced thesis. Think outside of the box, think bigger picture. And then the third one is integrate a reasonable counter argument and set it against the presented position. And almost every single one of you guys did that. It's very evident that Ms. McKinney and Ms. Holden taught you guys last year to write an although or despite type thesis. Okay, so pretty good on that. Again, thesis point's easy. Now, when we get down here to evidence and commentary, I want to jump back to 10th grade words and writing styles. I know last year you guys were like CPAR was the way you had to write, and there was really no variation. Like you had to do it CPPAAAR. I taught 10th grade honors for forever, so I'm very familiar with the CPAR situation and how rigid it is, and how if you don't do it exactly the way they tell you, they kind of you kind of lose points. In AP language, we have what is quote unquote CPAR. I just use the College Board terminology. Okay, so yes, you have a claim. That's your topic sentence like it was before. But evidence and commentary, evidence supports your claim. It's the same thing as a proof, okay? And commentary supports your evidence. It's the same thing as analysis. So the thing about CPAR, we are pulling away from it in that I call it something different, and also that it's a more relaxed structure this year. Like you don't have to write that super rigid CPAR body paragraph this year. A more organic essay is most likely going to score higher than a CPAR essay. There's nothing wrong with CPAR. I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, it's been a whole year writing CPAR and now I'd never have to use it again. That's absolutely untrue. CPAR is still good if you get in the position and you can't think, what should I do next? Do CPAR. It works. It works every time. All right. I don't call it CPAR. I call it E&C, but they serve the same functions. Okay, so if you want to keep that more rigid body paragraph of CPAR, that's fine with me. But if you want to kind of loosen your style up a little bit and allow your voice as a writer to grow, that's what I want you to do. I want you to go beyond CPAR. Okay. So now let's look at the points here for E&C. 0 points, you restate the thesis, you are repetitive, or you're off topic. Okay. 1 point, you provide general evidence, okay? I got a lot of general evidence on this essay. Just general, basic, low-hanging fruit. Have you all ever heard that term? Low-hanging fruit, it's easy to grab at. General evidence that's not really analyzed in the commentary is a 1. A 2 is when you have some specific evidence, but it's not all specific. And then when you get to the commentary, even less of that evidence is connected to the claim, right? 2.5, I had a lot of 2.5s in the middle, honestly. You provided specific evidence for most of the claims, and some of that evidence was supportive of a line of reasoning. So notice how the words change. We go from general to specific to most claims are specific, and then if you look at 3, all claims are specific, but only some of the evidence supports the line of reasoning, so maybe some of your evidence is not quite on topic. And then you get to 4, all right? Provides specific evidence to support all claims in the line of reasoning and consistently explains how the evidence supports a line of reasoning. I'm going to show you an essay in a minute that's got highlighted sections so you can see the evidence and see the commentary, and you'll notice that there's not any extra in the highlights. So by the end of the school year, if everyone is writing a 1-3, you're going to be fine. Okay, that's kind of my goal. If you're writing 1-4s, that's wonderful. If you're writing 1-3-1, that's wonderful. If you're writing 1-4-1, that's amazing. But ultimately, as long as we're all consistently writing a 1-3-0, that's fine, okay? And most of you guys are already really close to that. That's excellent. Now, looking down at the sophistication point, which is much more difficult to get. The 0, I want you guys to think about your thesis, like how important the thesis truly is. If you write a basic generic thesis that has no nuances to it, you're setting yourself up for a really basic essay, okay? If you write a more intricate, complex, nuanced thesis, and then you support it, you're automatically setting the ground for a sophisticated essay. Does that make sense? So that thesis is so important. The ways to earn this sophistication point, I'm going to kind of start backwards. There are 4 ways to earn a sophistication point, okay, the whole point. Number 1, you can craft a nuanced argument. You all know what nuance means, do we know? It's like varying shades. If something is nuanced, you recognize the difference or the complexity between words that are similar. You recognize that it's not just a yes or a no answer, but there's varying shades of an answer. That's what nuance means. All right, so you write a nuanced argument by consistently, notice that word, consistently, identifying and exploring the complexities or tensions. Now, for example, when you look at this essay that we just turned in, I got a lot of really basic essays. There were definitely a few essays that were like, corporate sponsorships are wonderful for schools. We should always allow any corporate sponsor to sponsor our school no matter what, because we get money and they get money and that everybody wins, okay? That is a very basic, generic, one-note essay. Because in actuality, should schools accept every single group that wants to sponsor it? No, because some things just straight up aren't appropriate in a school setting, right? And so to recognize that, hey, we should accept as many appropriate sponsorships Yes, inappropriate ones we should decline. But if you notice the way that that student worded, we should accept every single sponsorship, no matter what it is, blah, blah, blah. Like you have to recognize the nuance in the situation. If you do that all the way through an essay, you get the full credit one, okay? Number two, articulating the implications or limitations of an argument by situating it within the broader context. So that means looking outside of what the prompt is directly saying and inferring maybe what the real issue is. Okay, so for example, this whole paper was about schools needing sponsorships to fund whatever it is, okay? If you ask yourself, yeah, we need to do this, we need to do this, did any of you guys ask yourself why we need to do this? Anyone think of why schools need corporate sponsorships?
The funds for their various programs and kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the first answer, but why do we need to go seek out extra money? Can anyone think? We don't have the money. Anyone at home, can you unmute and tell me why maybe we need to go seek out corporate sponsorships? Like we don't have the money. Like we did not have the money to build that wonderful football turf field that we have. Why don't we have the money for that?
Because our school is publicly funded and we don't get enough government funds to help fund what we need at the school.
That's exactly correct. Thank you. Schools are funded through government, like state and local agencies. The state pays every school, every public school, X amount of money per kid per year. All right. And then it's subsidized or supplemented with money from the local property taxes. But even still in a place like Germantown, where we have a lot of resources, we still don't have enough to have things like a nice football field. And it's not because we poorly handle our money. It's because schools are underfunded, right? In general. And that's absolutely unfair, okay? That's the bigger issue to this paper. And anyone who addressed that was really sharp, okay? So if you can address the situation in the broader context, like the fact that schools are underfunded to begin with, and write about that all the way through, that's gonna score you a sophistication point, okay? I call that like extra message, I call that the QBQ. You're gonna hear me say that all year long, the QBQ, the question behind the question. What's the real problem? What are we really trying to fix, right? Because we can raise money all day long to get a new football field and buy a new band room and put new uniforms on the soccer team or whatever, but is it really helping us get a better education? Right. All right, so number 3 says making an effective rhetorical choices that strengthens the force and impact of the student writing. So basically what that means is that you recognize rhetorical choices when you read pieces, but you can also write using those rhetorical choices to strengthen your own argument. So effectively varying your syntax, using very specific diction, using repetition and parallel structure to prove a point. Like all of those things that you've been taught, like the basics of rhetoric, actually using them when you write too, and doing that all the way through, that will score you the whole point. And the last one is employing a style that's consistently vivid and persuasive throughout the student's response. This is students that have the high level vocabulary, that have a strong control of the English language and recognize that you can start a sentence like a subject verb complement, or you can start a sentence with a transitional expression that's a participial phrase and then lead into your simple sentence, varying the structure. Those kinds of writers, like that just have that strong, vivid style, are often the students that have the highest vocabularies. So keep that in mind. All right, so you can do any of these 4. If you do it all the way through the essay, you're gonna score that sophistication point. If you do it once or twice in the essay, you're probably only gonna score half, okay, for this semester. So that is the rubric. Anyone in class have questions about the rubric? No? Anyone at home have questions about the rubric? Just unmute and ask. We all look okay? Okay. Now we're going to go and we're going to look at an essay. And it is here in the Thursday folder. I'll put it up on my screen. The first thing you're going to see is my annotated prompt and then an example essay. And annotation is so key to this class. If you do not like annotating or you just don't do it enough, you're kind of hurting yourself in the long run. Annotations make it, when you go back to read something a second time, make it so much smoother to read. You remember what you need to use when you're about to write. So this is my prompt. And we know what it was about, and we know what the question was. We're talking about cash-strapped schools. Schools need cash, but they also need an ad-free environment. So when I did my annotations, I thought about schools and the financial situation and the advertising situation and the educational situation from both the kid point of view, and well, I guess three ways: kid point of view, educator point of view, and parent point of view. Right? You may not have looked at the parent point of view because you aren't parents, but for me, that is something that stands out to me. So the thing about advertisements, they're meant to persuade, right? A stronger word for persuasion, or maybe a more negative word, is coercion. Do we know what coercion means? Anybody? Coercion is like a more negative connotation of the word persuasive, or maybe you're persuading someone for maybe malicious reasons, right? So the idea of coercion underage is a really difficult issue. Okay, it's difficult as an educator. I don't want to ever put anything into your minds that might mislead you, whether intentionally or unintentionally. For parents, it's a whole different situation because they're trying to teach you to have values that they think are important. The public, however, when they are putting out advertisements, they have one thing in mind. And what is that one thing? Money. Yeah, capitalism is a huge, we're a capitalistic country, but there are other things that, and companies that that market that aren't necessarily money based. Like you've got a lot of nonprofits and so forth, but we're all trying to get you to buy into our product, whatever it might be. So I started thinking about ads and the target population at a school, and it's young people. Like the advertisements that you see at school, it's not for the teachers, it's not for the administration. They're trying to target you because you guys are under 18. Your brains are not fully developed yet. You all, if you don't know this or not, your brain doesn't fully develop until you're about 25 years old. There's still a lot going on, and it makes you more impressionable because of that. And so I think it's a problem, these ads. So I want you to think about this. What's the difference between an adult and a young person? Number one, you can't give legal consent, right? Number two, you can't get married. Number three, you can't vote. Number four, you have a restricted driver's license. Number five, if you got arrested for whatever reason, you'd be tried in a separate court. And then if you were convicted, you'd go to a separate jail, right? I know these all sound really harsh, but it's because society recognizes that adolescents are not the same as adults. And so we shouldn't be treating you the same way that adults are treated. And that also applies to ads. The ads that you see should not be the same ads that adults see. Now, does that happen? No, y'all see everything. Like, I'm very aware of that. But at a school, under the guide of educators, it's partially our responsibility to shield you from things that are not appropriate age-wise, okay? So if society can recognize that adolescents are different, educators and advertising companies should recognize that as well. And down here I have a note, FCC. The FCC is an organization that monitors what is on media, depending upon where the media is. So like, for example, if you watch network television, you'll notice there's less crime, less language, less mature content than maybe say HBO, right? Because you have to pay for HBO, and when you pay, you're kind of automatically signing away that filter, if that makes sense. Same thing with satellite radio versus regular radio. You're not going to hear nearly as much profanity as you would on a satellite station because it's paid content. Does that make sense? So the FCC is something you could think about to bring in. The other thing I thought about is that you guys are obligated to come to school. And so what you see and what you do at school are often required, just like your attendance. And if we start putting advertisements in our classroom, you know, from Cheetos and Coca-Cola and whatever else, we have to think about, is this coercing you into wanting to eat Cheetos and drink Coke all day long, or whatever it might be? Does that make sense? This term in loco parentis, that's simply a Latin term for the person who's basically in charge of a student or a young person while the parents are away. So educators fall into this category. Again, we have a special obligation to shield you guys from anything that is not appropriate age-wise, because you're in our care, and the line between an educator and a student as far as morality is concerned is usually more conservative, than maybe a parent and a child, because your parents have complete say over you until you're 18, right? Because they're yours. But you aren't mine. So in my book, I want to keep everything as morally reputable as possible. So again, advertising falls into that category. Let's see. So the school has a moral responsibility to make sure that you guys are safe and that you're educated appropriately and the content that you guys are exposed to is acceptable. And again, at a place like Houston High School, we don't have to ask as many questions about trade-offs because we don't need as much financial assistance. However, other schools that are really hurting financially have to ask themselves, is the trade-off to put a Coke machine in the cafeteria worth it to get a new football field? You see what I mean? Most would probably say, yeah, that's fine, because kids drink Coke anyway, right? That's kind of how we rationalize it out. But again, kind of back to the bigger issue, the real problem is that schools should be adequately funded. And if we were adequately funded, we would not have to rely on corporate sponsorships to have nice things, you know? And so if you're writing an essay like this, like you guys did, a really sophisticated person would catch that and they would offer suggestions. Well, maybe we could apply this tax, or maybe we could do this kind of donation, or whatever it might be, offering suggestions to fix the problem. Because yeah, they're saying, is this an issue? To some it is, to some it isn't. But in actuality, this is a big problem. Like, schools should not have to go to Principal Toyota and ask for a partnership in order to get some new facility. Okay? So that's my thoughts. Did any of you guys think about it that deeply? You can say no, it's okay. It's the first one. Well, I just wanted to show you my thought process on this to model it for you. And then that way on the next one, you guys kind of know where I'm coming from and what to expect. So the last thing we're going to do today is look at this essay. I'm going to read it to you. It's all color coded except for the first two sentences. This is a high scoring essay, so just listen. When a popular local restaurant recently gave our English class pins emblazoned with their names and coupons on a class outing, we jokingly exclaimed, "They're sponsoring AP English," right? Is that a normal, expected introductory sentence to an essay? No, but it sounds like something you want to read, right? So it catches your attention, right? You kind of have a hint about what it's going to be about, some sponsorships. There's some nice diction in there, emblazoned instead of printed, you know, some upper level diction. Then we have a bridge sentence with a nice transition. However, what we failed to recognize at the time was the effect this one company had on us. So you can see where this writer is going, the effect the pins or restaurant had on their relationship. And then we have our thesis. This restaurant has since been associated with AP English, and it is no wonder Similar corporations hope to achieve the same effect by sponsoring schools. Now, that thesis statement is not formulaic at all, but you know what the writer's talking about, right? And it's arguable, right? And you're interested, okay? Great intro. It's short, should be short. Great intro paragraph. Now, my claims are orange, my evidence is pink, and my commentary is yellow. Benefits of corporate partnerships are both economical and educational. Solid claim, right? Having ample number of logos across schools lends itself to discussion in consumer economic classes about the logistics of the market and the economy. Now, that piece of evidence is specific, it's personal, and it's real life. Okay, you can tell if this kid actually is in a high school taking an economics class and has made the connection to what's being learned in the classroom and what they're seeing in real life. Right. Also, I want you to notice, I want to take like a pause for a second. Some of y'all did do like outside research for evidence, and that's fine for this essay. I told you to try not to do that, but for future reference, you don't need to do that. The whole point of us growing our brains is so that you have that evidence in your brain, right? Now look at the commentary. Corporate partnerships, evident in school, teaches kids from an early age about money and the economy. And it might even boost the economy as well. Like commercials, corporate partnerships will foster an alliance between a child and a product that will often increase as time continues, right? All of the commentary there is original, it's connective, it supports the evidence that supports the claim, okay? Then we move on to another piece of evidence. For example, a school that only sells Pepsi will virtually ensure that a student will become a Pepsi consumer and continues to buy it outside of school. From a corporation standpoint, this is an ideal indeed. Sorry, y'all. All right, so in that paragraph, we have two pieces of evidence, solid commentary, and a solid claim. The whole thing is highlighted because there is no summary or repetition. However, while corporate sponsorships may teach students about consumerism, the learning is only an addition because the purpose of school is to learn. So here is where the writer kicks in to the side that he or she is defending. So that first was kind of like an opposition, and then now I'm going to refute it with my opinion. Schools should be a haven for learning, but repeated exposure to quote CoverGirl or quote McDonald's signs intrude into a student's mindset. Having to go to class in the Snapple library distracts a child and makes a school and its room lose its educational integrity. Moreover, while corporate sponsorships might add cash aid to schools, in more instances than not, more money does not equate to a better education. That's a really strong point, right? Unless the school severely lacks fundamental materials, all that more money can do is build more classrooms or hire new teachers, all additions that make a great education only minutely better. Now, do you agree with that? I mean, from your personal experience, if you look at what we see, since we don't see the books and we don't see the finances, but what we see, a lot of this big money that we get, it doesn't go into the classroom necessarily, right? Perhaps money that was allocated for sports can now be reallocated to the classroom because a lot of our sports are covered. And that's probably honestly what happens. But a new classroom doesn't make education better, you know? And this person recognizes that and has a strong control of the language. You know how many dashes this kid has used? 2 or 3. Use them correctly. That's really strong. Most people don't ever use dashes because they don't know how. My experience has shown that a lack of corporate sponsorship is the right decision for a school to make. In middle school, we were consistently bombarded by craft products and events in school because the corporate headquarters had just happened to be minutes away. Another personal example. Ironically, my overexposure to craft has trained me to look upon their products with discontent, and my middle school experience is now characterized by craft and not the education I received. An environment free from ads is rare to find nowadays, but it can thankfully be found in my high school, leading me to believe that the detriment of corporate advertising in school far outweigh the benefits. I am convinced that a school should be about education, not about posters and ads that embellish it. Right? How much of this essay was unhighlighted, aside from the first two sentences? None. Strong thesis, 3 strong claims, supported by 3 or 4 pieces of evidence in total. All of the commentary was supportive of the evidence, and it all tied back together, supporting the idea that school sponsorships are not all of their cracked up to be. Okay? Really strong essay. What do you guys think it scored on a 6-point scale? Anybody else want to take a stab? What do you guys at home think?
I'd say probably a 6.
6? All right. It actually scored a 5.5. All right. The only reason it didn't score a 6 is because it didn't take that one extra leap to talking about like the real bigger issue of underfunding. Okay. Had we talked about that all the way through, yeah, 6, easy. Yes. No, it's just a little bit outside, because if you brought that into your commentary to support, it would prove that you're thinking bigger than why do we have sponsors? Because we have to have them because we don't have enough money because government bureaucracy, right? Now, if you look at the way it's scored here, a 1 for the thesis, a 4 for E and C, and then a 0.5 for commentary. I'm going to score you guys like this, 1, 4, 1, so you can see exactly which category you need help in. Okay? Now, it's about time to go. Any questions for me? Yes. I'm going to stop sharing and right now. Yeah.
So I noticed